Okay, we got an interesting one here. I've been out for this past weekend. We had a 3-day weekend with Memorial Day, so I hope you all had a great weekend. But the story here is that several Target stores received bomb threats from angry LGBTQ allies. Now, the reason this story is, I'm following up on this even though the weekend is long over, is one, it is a really big story pertaining to what's going on with Target. They've lost billions of dollars. And if you were holding stock in Target and Bud Light, you've lost a lot of money. But Timcast.com has been directly implicated in what I will tell you outright is some kind of hoax, but we don't know why or how or what the plan is. I'm going to break down for you the conspiracy because, well, maybe it's not a conspiracy because it could have been perpetrated by one person. But the story goes like this. Several locations in Utah, I believe several locations were evacuated. Target locations in Utah, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, spanning the greater Cleveland, Salt Lake City, and Pittsburgh areas, reportedly received correspondence Friday threatening to blow up several sites. And all the emails sent referenced the Pride Month display controversy. Now, the emails have been widely reported, so I'm going to show them to you. Here's the initial story. We have TMZ outright saying it was a hoax. It is, but what kind of hoax, perpetrated by who, and for what purpose, we don't know, and I can only speculate. I can debunk a portion of this. And this is interesting. This looks to be not, I don't want to say that this attack is extremely sophisticated, but there is some interesting sophistication involved in this hoax, threat, attack, whatever you want to call it, that I can break down for you. We have this story initially from Cleveland 19 News. They say Cleveland 19 News receives bomb threat against 5 targets as store face LGBTQ plus controversy. Cleveland 19 was hoaxed with tricked into publishing an email without reaching out to us, as far as I can tell, in any capacity. I could be wrong, but our email address is listed on the threat. So let me show you the story. They say, Cleveland 19 News received a bomb threat Friday afternoon against 5 Target stores in the area. The threat, received at 12:26 p.m. via email, centered around Target's LGBTQ plus merchandise. Immediately jumping to action, our staff made reports with each local police department, as well as the Cleveland division of the FBI. The email below says it's from an Alsan Akhmedov, an individual who is pro-LGBT, angry with Target for backing down and pulling pride displays in support of the far right. It says the email was sent to members@timcast.com. I can confirm we never received this email. It is fake. Now, that doesn't mean that the Cleveland 19 News did not receive it, but something doesn't quite make sense. I don't know how they received an email that was sent to us that we never got. Unless, of course, someone took a screenshot and sent the screenshot to this news organization, never sent it to us. The news organization published it without critical thinking or reaching out to us to confirm if the email was in fact real. But I digress. I suppose if you receive the email, it doesn't matter who it's being sent to, you're going to want to report it. I don't want to say too much as to what look, I'll tell you this. I do think it's somewhat inappropriate for Cleveland 19 News to talk about what they're doing with the FBI and all this stuff. I'll just say that we are taking action based on the information we received, and I'm not going to say much as I don't want to interfere in whatever it is law enforcement may be doing, except for the fact that I will talk about what's in the public sphere and what I can't comment on. The email in question says it was sent, I want to stress this point, to members@timcast.com. We did not receive this email. I want to make that clear for you. However, we did receive something interesting and somewhat similar, but not this one. I don't want to say too much again because of potential investigations. The email that we received also included in its to section another prominent individual in the culture war space. I am not going to say who they are because I believe what may be happening is a spoof email being sent to one address with a different address, a spoofing technique, so that it forces several high-profile individuals to ramp the story up. This is relatively sophisticated. So the question is, who did it and why? Is it a leftist trying to genuinely express their outrage and maximize press coverage? Perhaps. Is it not really a leftist, but perhaps someone on the right who's trying to smear the far left as extremists and terrorists? And that one doesn't make sense to me either. I initially thought that may be the case, but you don't need to do that to the left. Like, what's the point? It's like Antifa can go around firebombing buildings. This doesn't do anything to change anything in the media narrative. I do not understand what the ultimate goal was, but I can only say the simple solution is a leftist got mad and sent threats. That's it. I can speculate beyond that, but all we can really say for now is that it appears an ally of the LGBTQ plus community used a slightly above average, like slightly more, I'm saying slightly more sophisticated email threat technique to maximize press coverage. If we are to remove all assumption, or if we are to remove our speculation, the simple solution is a leftist sent threats to several media personalities and activists and used a spoofing technique to try and maximize press coverage, and that worked. That's it. However, beyond that, I don't understand why someone on the left would do something like this, so brazen and obvious, except, of course, the obvious. The average person who's engaging in an attack like this, they're not smart people. You wonder why it is that these people who perpetrate mass tragedies do so on these targets of seemingly little consequence. It's like, if you were really mad about something, why would you do it here? Well, because they're crazy. Like the people who do this kind of stuff, who make bomb threats, who SWAT, are unwell. That's just it. They are not well in the head. So why would they do this? Well, they're not thinking straight. They're angry. They're targeting a organization. And you know what? I said on Twitter, I think I might have it pulled up. I'm not sure. I said, here we go. Timcast.com never received this email, and I have no idea how they got this screenshot. We did receive something similar, but not this one, which is odd. I believe it's a hoax intended to smear the left. I'll tell you, I'm not at home. We're out for Memorial Day weekend. Where was I at the time? I was in a poker room. Surprise, surprise. Hanging out. When I get a text asking me if this is real, and I look at it and I'm like, what? An email sent to timcast.com? So I immediately reach out to everybody. Nobody's available because it's Memorial Day weekend and everyone's got, the weekend off. But within a few minutes, we start checking and start looking around, and sure enough, doesn't exist. The question is, how did they do this? They made an email, sent it to Cleveland 19, but made sure that it said our name because they wanted me to make a video about it and make sure everybody heard it. Well, don't do it on a Friday. Well, Friday's the day where news goes to die. It came in at 12:26 p.m., they claim. We have security filters and things like that because we've been swatted so much. So these things, they mean nothing to us. And it wasn't until I saw this, and I saw this the next day, because we were here on Friday, did I actually get a chance to respond to it. They say it was not immediately known if the threats were legitimate. Look, the threats are the attack, okay? Don't overthink it. They of course are not going to be able to go to a series of target locations and engage in whatever it is they're claiming they're doing. We were swatted 15 times, plus we had some similar incidents, bomb threats and things like that here. Of course they have no access to this building. Of course they can't do it. The reason they do it is to disrupt. The threat itself is the attack. So what did we end up seeing? We saw these stores were evacuated. I think we have this right here. Layton Target evacuated after bomb threats reported at multiple Utah stores. That was the purpose. You're shopping in Target and all of a sudden you're getting evacuated. You want to find out why. The simple explanation is that a leftist threatened the store. Now, at first I said on Twitter that I believed it was a hoax intended to smear the left. That was me without being able to read the story or know what was going on. I think there is a decent probability that is true. Someone made this email. I'm looking at this. I'm like, what? They want me to talk about it and they want me to claim it was the left. Well, here's what I can say. If you were to ask me, I would say that there is a decent probability, maybe around a third, 30%, This is not a leftist, but someone who is anti-leftist. I don't know to which political faction they may be. It doesn't inherently mean conservative or anything. It could be a variety of individuals. It could be religious. It could be not religious. Strong possibility this is intended to smear the left and make them look crazy. However, as we then analyze the situation, as I'm reading more about what happened, and when we look at what we received and whose names were listed on that, I now actually don't think that is the greatest probability. Although I think there is a decent probability, I believe the plurality falls with a leftist just did this. And the reason for it is Occam's razor. In the absence of evidence, the answer that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be correct. And what can we say? Decently sophisticated, but not really. Spoofing attack to target a bunch of Target locations after Target had just announced they were backing off. Well, why would the right target if Target was saying we're pulling back? That's why I say it's about 30%. Target still has many of these displays, despite the fact that they've publicly announced they're pulling a lot of this pride stuff. That would give conservatives, people on the right, anti-LGBTQ individuals, more far-right individuals, incentive to cheer for Target, not to target Target. I mean, what a stupid name. Why go after someone who's doing what you want them to do? That doesn't make sense. What does make more sense is that someone on the left spoofed these emails to trigger a high-profile response to terrorize Target because they often use tactics like this as it is. If you go to Berkeley, if you go to other areas in California, if you go to Portland, Oregon, you will see in the windows of businesses, please don't hurt us. Posted this on Instagram. Actually, let me pull this up for you. It was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it is actually still true and correct. Let me pop over to Instagram and grab this image, which many of you may have seen. This image right here is a store that says, single mother owned, please show mercy, this is all I have. Why would people put messages like this in their storefront? It's because the far left goes around smashing up buildings and terrorizing and threatening people. This lines up more with their MO than anything else. Now, TMZ says it was deemed a hoax, but what they mean by that is that no bombs were actually planted. These emails were a hoax intended to scare and startle. Okay. What's the end result? The end result of these attacks are that several of these stores were evacuated, and it probably cost them a decent amount of money. Many regular people who were there are probably asking what just happened, and then they find out later in the news that an LGBTQ ally threatened more than just these locations in states across the country. This is decently sophisticated. I say decently because it's not like the most I've ever seen. It's not like a state level, high profile thing. Those things you wouldn't even know if they were hoax. I mean, that's where you get crazy. Maybe Antifa could be a psyop, who knows? But this is targeting multiple states, multiple addresses. Somebody put work into this. So what can I say? The CEO comes out and says, we're pulling back a bunch of our pride things, but don't worry, we support you. I called that last week a spit in the face, being spat on. They're going to you and saying, we support you. Of course we do. We're just pulling this merchandise off the shelves and hiding it in the back. That is insulting as insulting gets. So the motivation in the simple solution, we can get conspiratorial all day. And I think it's fine to say there's a decent probability this was actually a false flag to smear the LGBTQ community. But I got to say, the simple solution would be what the email states, plain and simple. They're LGBTQ allies. They're offended they did this. They were spat on. They say, you're cowards. And we want to make sure everyone knows this is what we do. I've not been swatted by the right as far as we know. All the threats we received come from the left. And there's information we have about where they may be coming from that we've relayed to law enforcement. Surprise, nothing's happened. That indicate it probably did come from the left. Considering that when it came to the attacks on us, we actually have reason to believe it literally was leftists, based on what I would call a coloring the water scenario where certain information that came out could have only come from a particular source. It stands to reason the left was swatting us. In this instance, following a very similar MO, probably is leftist, but I don't know. I do think there may be like a 30% chance that it was intended to false flag and smear the left, but it's probably greater than 50% that it was actually, I would put it at maybe like, let's do this. 60 some odd percent, maybe 65% chance, maybe 68% chance, I think it was left. Maybe like 31% or 32 or 31.9. I do think there's like a teeny possibility it was intelligence, meaning government actor. I open the door to that possibility, though I have no evidence to suggest it's true. It's just speculative, but it could even be foreign intelligence. I'm not saying the United States. It could be intended to sow division in the U.S. to create chaos and disrupt our economy, especially as we're getting news right now that Russia, Moscow, was just hit by Ukrainian drones. We'll get more into that later. Picking this story up because it directly involves us. So again, I don't know. I really, really don't. I'm going to have to ask you what you think, and you can comment below. But we do know this. Target Bud Light investors lose billions on marketing misses. Target and Anheuser-Busch have lost a combined $28 billion in market value. Something big is happening, and I don't see why the right would do something like this when they're already winning. I mean, look, I'm trying to piece this all together to figure out what makes the most sense. And so this weekend, when I see this, I'm like, BS. Who would do this? A bunch of leftists were like, it's very honest of you, Tim, very honest of you, when I said that I think they were trying to smear the left. Because to stand up so defiantly and be like, yes, it was I, the leftist, who did this. It's kind of like, okay, you realize that'll only make you look bad. But then I think about Antifa going around smashing windows and BLM doing the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, they do that. That they literally do. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to make assumptions. And then I thought about this story, which when I began digging into it, and I'm like, Target and Bud Light have lost a combined $28 billion in market value. The right has the moral high ground. Why give it up? They wouldn't. However, the argument could be made that the smearing of the left is intended to continually push the right's high ground, but I don't think it does. All it does is just put a bigger target on these organizations, and I don't know if it accomplishes anything in terms of market value, right-wing boycott. Like, the right's not going to double down on their boycott because the left is threatening them. What does this really accomplish? Scares Target employees? Okay, does that help the right in any way? Not really. I mean, the threats were demanding they put the Pride stuff back. If anything, it hurts the right-wing position because you will have Target employees being scared, being like, please just put it back up. They're threatening violence, in which case the right is hindered by this, which is why I pull back a little bit and say, okay, this seems to be more like the left actually trying to pull this off, actually trying to threaten and terrorize employees who are refusing to support the LGBTQ community because that's the MO of the left. Man, it's tough. That's all I can say. It's tough. You tell me. They say over at Fox Business, recent high-profile and controversial marketing decisions by Target and Bud Light are backfiring and burning shareholders in the process to the tune of a combined $28 billion. These are both cases where brands have gotten in the middle of some really controversial issues, said Timothy Calkins, associate chair of the marketing department at Northwestern Kellogg, in an interview with Fox Business. I think we'll see more brands be very cautious about getting into the middle of some of these really controversial issues. Bud Light's gifting transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney, we know at this point exactly what happened, resulted in a $19 billion drop. Look at that. Wow. 14% amid nationwide boycotts. And it's resulted in what is being called the Bud Light effect. Target said they were fearing a Bud Light situation, so they panicked and pulled back. I think it makes sense. The left doesn't have market power. The left isn't going to be able to rally investors to buy into Target, right? So what can you do? If you're a low-tier, low-intelligence individual, you have very little money, but you do have the ability to send emails, and you're looking at $28 billion dropping off, you know market incentives are against you, and there's nothing you can do financially to get people to buy back in to this company. So what can you do? If you go to Target and say, you know, you better put that LGBT stuff back or you'll lose money, they'll say we were losing money because of it. There's only one thing that counters a fear of a loss of money, and that's a fear of violence. So again, that's why I look at this and I'm like, I think the goal is to bolster the left, right? Take a look at this from the New York Post. Target gave $2.1 million to LGBTQ group that urges schools to hide kids' gender transitions from parents. Target is very much in the pro-LGBTQ camp. They're losing money now because of it. The left, like the far leftists, they use violence and terror to push people into doing what they want. How many people are scared of getting canceled? There was a poll done recently, we talked about this on IRL, that showed like the majority of people were terrified that something they said would come up and resurface and their life would be destroyed. The fear of social ostracizing or violence is the motivating power of the left, which makes this all seemingly obvious. Now, the email we received was sent to a high-profile individual I'm not going to name. I believe the intent was for us to publish the email just like Cleveland 19 did, which would then, the screenshot, show their email, forcing them to make a statement, creating a cascade effect of high-profile individuals all making statements, bolstering the reach of the story, saying, if you do not do as we want, we will do bad things, is what they were saying in the email. Don't know. You let me know what you think. Interesting story nonetheless. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.